Hey everybody, Bill in Virginia. Welcome back. So in this episode, I'm going to be doing a couple of things. One is I am going to be starting up here. I've got materials to do my brackets for my shelves, so I can kind of get those under construction and see what I'm going to do. I'm probably going to put some LED lights underneath for over the workbench as well. So a few things that I'll get started on there this episode. Second thing is, over here on the HO scale layout, I'm going to be building some of my favorite things. Trees! Not a lot. What I'm going to do is I am going to take out pine trees like this, like that, like that. You know, I've got a handful of them. Well, I've got more than a handful, a couple of handfuls across the entire layout, not that many. What I'm going to do is I'm going to scratch build some trees out of the grapevine wire core and then florist wire wrap. So here's one that I just finished. So this is, scale about probably about 40 feet tall. I had a small one in there that I had scratch built, just real small. That one might end up going over on the end scale. But I got this one done just a little bit ago. So I'm going to be making a number of them to take care of areas where I've got the very pointy pine trees. A handful here, way down to the end of the layout, way down over there, and I've got a couple right over there. Those I've scratch built over in here. The big ones that I've scratch built over here already, so all of those are going to stay. So I'm going to be working on that in this episode too. Not showing too much on the construction, maybe a few little snippets, but then we'll kind of take a look at the before, ta-da, and then what the after looks like as I get a little bit more realistic tree put in place. The end scale layout over there, I'm not going to do anything with the trees. I like the trees that I got. I'm not going to really scratch build anything over that way. I've already put in a few, as you've seen in prior videos, up around the town of Alta. But let's get started and see what I can get done in this episode here. Well, it has been several days since I filmed the last clip. I've been busy doing other things all around the house, but I've got my basic tree armatures under construction that are going to go on the HO scale to kind of replace some of those pine trees. And you can see what I've done. Similar to what I've done in the past is I take a core of that grapevine wire, in some instances a single strand, many cases 3 strands to kind of build up a thicker trunk. And then I've added 3 pieces to all of these of florist wire. These I will take once the glue all sets, and I'm using Titebond, not Titebond, Gorilla Glue on this. Once that is all set, I will then take those wires and twist them up to give me the top of the tree and those first few little branches near the top. Then I'll be able to come back in with my looped florist wire and then build up the trunks, and then I can start applying Mod Podge and Woodland Scenics ground cover to build up bark on the trees. So it really won't take too long. I will just let all of these sit, and I'll probably have to make some more. I don't think I've got enough here for all the trees that I'm going to replace, but this will get me started. Well, Sunday night is coming to a close. So I've come back in and I've taken each of those armatures, taken the baggy wrap off of it, and I get a lot of use out of those. That is the original batch when I started to make the trees on the O scale. So they've lasted for many trees each one. When they do get too bad, I throw them. But I have come back in now and I've twisted the wires kind of up and around the top of the tree, and then added a little bit more Gorilla Glue. And I've used my finger to just kind of smear it in a little bit. That'll just anchor everything, and you can see I did from the base of the grapevine wire to the base of the spun wire. Usually I get about 2 to 3 branches off of the 3 wires that I put on. Makes sense. One's the peak, then a couple of the smaller ones. Next, what I'll do is I will start to spool up a bunch of the wire with the loops. I can wrap around these, smaller trees, less loops, bigger trees, a lot more loops. I can get that on and get it cinched down, do a little glue once I get up to the top, and then I can cut those and I can start to form the trees and then start putting the bark on it using Mod Podge. But that's for another night. I'll let all of this just sit overnight, and for those of you that are concerned, sometimes they do stick a little bit to the cardboard that I've got here, but you can kind of see I've got most of the spots rubbed off with the glue. There's a little bit, but that'll peel off. And even if it does leave anything on the trunks, it's all going to be hidden with the Mod Podge and the Woodland Scenics ground cover. So a lot of trees. Won't take too long to put these together over this coming week. Monday night, and just getting started on putting some branches on these. So I've got one strand wound. This is about 18 inches of wire as it sits. You can see down here I've got the sort of limbs out a little farther from the main wire, and you can see it gradually tapers in, and the loops get smaller as I get more towards the top. I've got about 1.5 inches or so down here that I'll start to wrap around a trunk, and then wrap it until I get up near to the top, and I can adjust the spacing by just how tight I do the wraps. This one right here, I'll probably start and do one of the bigger trees. Smaller trees will take, maybe 3/4 to half of this for these to give me a good full appearance. So next step, I'll just wind up this one and go from there. So I had that first bit of wire wrapped around what is about my biggest tree. So I'm going to go through and I will move the loops so that I get good coverage. You can see where there's a lot of them on one side. So I will move them around so that I get down like what I've got at the bottom, which I've already moved those. I've added a little bit more Gorilla Glue at the bottom and the top, just so that the ends of the wires are firmly anchored. So I will get the loops in position, and I will cut them and be ready to go on to the next step with this one. Got the branches set on this one. You can see how it tapers down to the lower part of the trunk. See all of my offcuts here. You just nip the ends off of those loops. I will use my hands and fingers and spread those out, give them a little bit more natural shape, kind of move them up, move them down, just kind of fill in the branches, make it look good. Then the next step will be to paint on Mod Podge and start coating it with Woodland Scenics ground cover. There'll be a couple of coats on that, probably one good one up near the top, probably 2 down towards the middle, and then 2 or 3, maybe even 4 down at the base, just to give me the thickness of the trunk and a good taper to it. But I'll get started on that, show you a little bit more here in a second. Thursday night comes to an end, and I've been out here most evenings this week doing 1 or 2. Tonight I did my final sprint and did about 6 of these. So I've got all of the wire wrapped, and you can see I've got spots of glue where I'm gluing the bottom wire and then the top. So ultimately, I'm going to have trees that look like this. So this one's ready for the next steps. Some of these I have cut, most of them I have not. I will trim those, get them down to the size so I get a nice taper after the glue dries. So I'll do that tomorrow and then carry on with the project. I'm thinking by the end of this coming weekend, I will have these all done and put in place, and we'll take a look at it then. Friday night, and I've been out here for a little while. You can see I've been snipping the loops on these trees. So all of them are finished at this point. You can look down the tree. You can see a decent shape. I might trim a little bit more on like that really long one, but all of these have a nice taper to them from top down. Even the small ones have nice tapers. So next step is to get out the Mod Podge, an old brush, and start painting Mod Podge on these, and then sprinkle Woodland Scenics ground cover on it. So similar to what I've done in the past, I'm just going to paint everything with a fairly thin coat of Mod Podge so it's not running and dripping everywhere. And then just hold it over a can, and as I'm sprinkling powder on, just rotate it. I will have a glove on so I'm not getting glue all over my fingers. And then once all that dries, I'll come back and touch up anywhere that might be missed, and I'll probably add 1, maybe 2 more layers to the trunk, and I'll do that by holding the top after that sets, just to kind of make sure that it's not bigger through where the trees are, because it's got that extra wire, and then a smaller trunk. I want the trunk to be good size so that I get a nice smooth taper going up. So trunks on all of these might get 2, maybe even 3 coats of Mod Podge and sprinkle. Just build them up to the size I want. First coat of Mod Podge and Woodland Scenics ground turf on my trunk armatures. I've got a few more over here as well. I will let these dry, and then tomorrow come back in and build up the trunks, maybe not on all of them, but on a good number of them. Touch up a few areas here, and then they will be ready for putting the flocking on. So making some good progress. I still think that by the end of the day, Saturday, or potentially Sunday, I'll have these done and on the HO scale layout. So getting close for Saturday morning, and I have an extra coat of Mod Podge put on the trunks and tips of some of these. You can kind of see that whitish color. That's wet Mod Podge soaking through the Woodland Scenics ground cover. But you can also see nice shaped trees. So once these are dry, I can go on to the next step. I'll start to flock them and get them ready for the layout. So getting started on these now, Saturday evening. And you can see I just put the Mod Podge on the tips, top and bottom of these. And I'll sprinkle on my 2mm static grass along with very fine Woodland Scenics turf. I'll show you what that looks like here in just a second. So quite literally, 15 seconds later, and I've got my first coat on. So I'm going to do this to all of them, and then I will just let this dry. This gives me my attachment point for the 6mm static grass. And then after that, I'll come back in and add more of this on top of that to kind of flesh out my branches a little bit. So I'll show when I got everything farther along. All right, first coat of the static grass is on all of the trees. You know, quite honestly, if you wanted to stop at this point in the process, the trees would still look pretty good, but I'm going to let everything dry. And it's still early enough Saturday that maybe before I call it a day, I'll be able to come back in and give it that second application of Mod Podge and put the longer static grass on. So we'll see what I can get done yet this evening. Still Saturday night, and I'm out here putting the second application on. So you can see how the first ones look, and then this is a couple of trees with the 6mm static grass applied. So I will let this dry, and what I will do is I'm going to come back in with my florist shears, and some of the branches that stick up too high, I'll kind of trim them a little bit and keep the stuff that goes lower. But you can see how this makes the tree look much fuller than over here, much more realistic already. When this dries, I'll give it a quick coat of paint, and then again spread on more Mod Podge, and then put on more of the 2mm static grass, and go from there. But making some progress. That definitely thickens them up. It gives them a good texture. So I will let these sit overnight, and I should be able to finish these up on Sunday, no problem. I'll do some trimming, do a little paint, and do another application. Have them done pretty quick. So real quick, these are ready to go on to the next step. And on the bigger trees, what I come in to do is I take off some of those high little pieces that are on top of some of the branches. Don't need to get all, I just want to kind of trim it down a little bit so that it doesn't look like they're all sticking straight up. I want the ones that are on the sides and bottom to stay, because those will look more like branches when I'm done. So I'm going to go through and I will do some trim on all of these and then get ready for the next step, which will be painting. So I'll show more of that once I get to that point. All right, the trimming is done on all of them, and you can see a little pile, not much, just a little bit that I've cut off of it. And that's just off the tops. I want the bottom to be full, so that's where it's going to look like the branches are hanging down from the pine trees. So next step, paint. So for this part, it's going to be straightforward. What I'm going to use is a Rust-Oleum product, espresso satin. And, it can be any brown that you like, or even a dark green. Again, it's up to you. It's your layout, it's your trees. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this outside, and I'll wear gloves, and then I'm just going to give it a light shot from underneath, just to make some of those long static grass look like little limbs and little branches coming off of the main one. Then the next coating will go over the top of this, and it'll give me a pretty good effect. This color will kind of soak in a little bit on the armatures, so it'll give it some different shades of brown. I don't soak it, I just give it a light mist. So I'm going to do all that and then show you what all those look like. All right, you can see this pile of trees now that I've given them some spray paint. Again, it's subtle. It darkens it up, makes it look like branches in through here. Different amounts. Now I can come back in with each of these, and I will put the top coat on, and then they will be layout ready. So show you once I get that done. So you can see on this one, I use just a very light amount of Mod Podge. Just brush it on lightly, dab it, and now I'll sprinkle it, and I'll show you what this one looks like once it's finished. A couple of seconds later, and there I have my pine tree. So any areas where you see the little white, that will dry clear once the Mod Podge sets. But I'll work my way through all of these, and they'll be ready to go on to the layout. It doesn't take long, and every one is unique, even though you're using the same method to make these things. So show them to you once I get them all done. All right, trees are done. Now I've just got to put them on the layout. Variety of shapes and sizes. They look pretty good. I like this technique. It's easy to make. Every tree is different, even though you're using the same construction techniques for all of them. Different shapes and sizes. So next thing, put them on the layout and show you the final results here. So those 15 trees are now on the layout, and I do like how they look better than the store-bought trees. I've got that one there, I've got a couple over here. Put in a few over here. I'm gonna leave these guys right here in front of the company for the coal company, just because it looks like something that they've been trimming to kind of get that shape. So yeah, I'm okay with that. But I need to make a bunch more of these. So I've got everything done on this module that I think I'm gonna do. I think it looks okay. I have a fair number down here. So I will replace these. I just don't like the looks of those kinds of trees. You know, there's nothing wrong with it. I've got some smaller ones there. You know, something that's like this, it's a different type of tree and it's store-bought. I'll probably leave that one, take out a couple of those, take out that guy. Probably going to redo these two that I made down here. They're okay, but I like the newer versions of the trees that I've been doing. So I'm going to do some changes there. Over on the far side, I might just leave those. Those are the decent looking trees, store-bought. And I'll kind of decide on that later. Maybe change out that one right there. That's one of those ones that's similar to this one. But I'll do that another time. I've got some other things coming up. Got a trip to Japan that everybody will be seeing some videos on that coming up here shortly, or probably actually have already seen by the time this one gets published. And if everything goes right, I'm going to be going into Tokyo, into the Kato hobby shop that they have there. 2 floors of model trains. And it's big. Looked on their website. So anyway, with that, I'm calling this one good. This is one of my longer videos and really hadn't intended it to be that way. But keep having fun on your layouts. Until next time.